let's discuss the power of perception and the undeveloped brain, the powers of the mind. Let's discuss potential, shall we? It's been said that on average, we use roughly 10% of the brain's capacity, of the power, of the capability of our brain. 10% out of what we measure as 100%, as full capacity rather, but 10%. What remains? What powers are there? How much more capable, how much more control, more dimensions, how much more to reality is available to us, to the person who goes from 10% operational capacity to full capacity? What our reality, how would our perception, what is this brain? Have we discussed, I discussed a little bit the reptilian brain. I mean, the reptilian brain, if you can see my little cursor, you know, it's somewhere down here in this little R area, this little, it's like a little dot, one little portion of the brain that proportionally or disproportionately, one of the tiniest little parts of the brain informs 90% of our reality. Most of us are, our civilization is predicated upon that little tiny reptilian feature, fight or flight. And it's like a little tiny dot as far as this whole brain schematic, this brain right here. But the power of perception, you know, and this is all kind of brought about by a video that I posted some time back. And I knew that this was going to get mixed responses. I knew that this was going to be not necessarily understood. Let's see if this sound will come through. Anyway, a little bit of performance art that I did, if you want to call it that, but it was also an experiment, as I'm a tamperer, as I'm an experimenter. Hold on. Well, anyway, if a fraction of any of that noise came through, you'll get the point. So anyway, that's an example of some of the music that actually subdues me. That's an example of the type of music that soothes me. And it's, you know, it's within the metal genre, and it's a melodic sort of black metal style music, but it soothes me. It calms me. And how can another person who totally, you know, has no point of reference to that type of music or that, you know, culture, what have you, They don't, and it's alien to them. It's an affront to them. It's shocking. It's disgusting. It's like, it's mind-boggling. You know, how could somebody go to sleep to something like? And I didn't play all of it, but you know, I'm still. But the point is, you know, like let's just say, you know, death metal, black metal, metal, thrash metal, speed metal, you know, metal. Yeah, of course, it does have its outlet for aggression. It does have its violent and dark themes and whatnot, you know. But so then I'm not here to try to champion metal music. I wanted to discuss the power of the brain and the power of perception. And let's start real quick with Ram Dass. And the story goes, and here's, if you can see this right here, he talks about when he was younger and, well, 1967, I was born in 1969. He goes, in 1967, when I first came to India, I brought with me a supply of LSD, I guess more commonly known as acid, hoping to find someone who might understand more about these substances than we did in the West. When I had met Maharaji Neem Kauralji Baba, after some days, the thought had crossed my mind that he would be a perfect person to ask. The next day, after having that thought, I was called to him and he asked me immediately, "Do you have a question?" Of course, being before him was such a powerful experience that I had completely forgotten the question I had in my mind the night before. So I looked stupid and said, "No, Maharaji, I have no question." He appeared irritated and said, "Where is the medicine?" I was confused, but Bhagavan Das suggested, "Maybe he means the LSD. I asked, and Maharaji nodded. The bottle of LSD. Oh, this is pure stuff here. Well, it's the six, yeah. It's liquid acid. The bottle of LSD was in the car, and I was sent to fetch it. When I returned, I emptied the, oh, okay, he's got it in pill form. When I returned, I emptied the vial of pills in my hand. In addition to the LSD, there were a number of other pills for this and that, diarrhea, fever, sleeping pills, and so forth. He asked about each of these. He asked if they gave powers. I didn't understand at the time, and the thought that by powers, perhaps he meant physical strength. I said no. Later, of course, I came to understand that the word he had used, siddhis, right here, S-I-D-D-H-I-S, siddhis means psychic powers. Then he held out his hand for the LSD. I put one pill on his palm. Each of these pills was about 300 micrograms of very pure LSD, a solid dose for an adult. He beckoned for more. So I put a second pill in his hand, 600 micrograms. Again, he beckoned, and I added yet another, making the total dosage 900 micrograms, certainly not a dose for beginners. Then he threw all the pills in his mouth. My reaction was one of shock mixed with the fascination of a social scientist eager to see what would happen. He allowed me to stay for an hour and nothing happened, nothing whatsoever. He just laughed at me. The whole thing had happened very fast and unexpectedly. When I returned to the United States in 1960, I told many people about this acid, but there had remained in me a gnawing doubt that perhaps he had been putting me on and had thrown the pills over his shoulder or palmed them. 3 years later, when I was back in India, he asked me one day, "Did you give me medicine when you were in India last time?" "Yes." "Did I take it?" he asked. There was doubt. There was my doubt made manifest. "I think you did. What happened?" "Nothing." "Oh, Jao." And he sent me off for the evening. The next morning, I was called over to the porch in front of his room where he sat in the mornings on a tucket. He asked, "Have you got any more of that medicine?" It just so happened that I was carrying a small supply of LSD for just in case, and this was obviously it. "Yes, get it," he said. So I did. In the bottle were 5 pills of 300 micrograms each. One of the pills was broken. I placed them on my palm and held them out to him. He took the 4 unbroken pills. Then one by one, very obviously and very deliberately, he placed each one in his mouth and swallowed it. Another unspoken thought of mine now answered. As soon as he had swallowed blasphemy, he says, "Can I take water?" "Yes." "Hot or cold?" "It doesn't matter." He started yelling for water and drank a cup when it was brought. Then he asked, "How long will it take to act?" "Anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour." He called for an older man, a longtime devotee who had a watch. Marjorie had the man's wrist, held the man's wrist off and pulling at him to peer at the watch. "Will it make me crazy?" That seemed so bizarre to me that I could only go along with what seemed to be a gag. So I said, "Probably." And then we waited. After some time, he pulled the blanket over his face. And when he came out, after a moment, his eyes were rolling and his mouth was ajar. And he looked totally mad. I got upset. What was happening? Had I misjudged his powers? After all, he was an old man, though how old I had no idea. And I had let him take 1,200 micrograms. Maybe last time he had thrown them away, and then he had read my mind and was trying to prove that he could do it, not realizing how strong the medicine really was. Guilt and anxiety poured through me, but when I looked at him again, he was perfectly normal and looking at the watch. At the end of an hour, it was obvious nothing had happened. His reactions had been a total put on. And then he asked, have you got anything stronger? I didn't. And then he said, these medicines were used in Kulu Valley long ago, but yogis have lost that knowledge. They were used with fasting. Nobody knows how to take them with no effect. Your mind must be firmly fixed on God. Others would be afraid to take. Many saints would not take this, and he left it at that. So you see, when I asked him if I should take LSD again, he said it should not be taken in a hot climate. If you're in a place that is cool and peaceful and you're alone and your mind is turned toward God, then you may take the yogi medicine. So here we're talking about acid, LSD, 1,200 micrograms. He gave his guru in India, an old, very man advanced in age. But he said, if your mind is focused on God, and whomever's watching this, if you're not familiar with what LSD does or what acid can do, the potential of what it can do, it's very powerful. People lose their minds over it. It changes. If you just look at the history of it, I think Charles Manson was famously had taken so many doses of acid, and at a certain point, if you take 6 hits of acid, and I don't even know what the micrograms are, but if you're legally insane at that point. But my point is, with the brain and the powers of the brain and the powers of the mind, and what we attach, what our conditioning attaches to phenomena. A person who's not familiar with heavy metal music or death metal, black metal, they're gonna encounter that music, and it's gonna horrify them. They don't understand it. It's nothing. It's just exposure, really. It's experience at the end of the day. But there is a point in the mind and the perception for advanced mind, for advanced practitioners of the user of the brain, who transcend all perception. They see the brain as a tool, and the sense phenomenon that interacts with our physical environment. There must be a higher level of filter. There must be a higher perspective, and there is. And old gurus who can take acid and not freak out, and old dudes who can go to sleep listening to death metal and black metal and be soothed and happy with it are advanced practitioners. What can I say? Just a little bit of brain talk. So good morning, everybody. Namaste. Namaskaram.